Welcome in, Giants fans, to our broadcaster series as we continue with the one and only and one of my favorite people on the planet, Mike Krukow. It's true, you are.
One and only?
You are the one and only, and you are one of my favorite people. Those are.
Well, the feeling's mutual.
Thank you. Thank you. I was actually preparing for this interview. I was talking to my husband, Paul, who knows Mike very well, and he referred to you as a Renaissance man, and you're one of, like, if you know that commercial, The Most Interesting Man in the World?
Yeah.
Mike could be that. And you have this wonderful gift of gab, and you can relate and talk to anyone. Where do you think that comes from? Do you think you've always been that way?
I have. I had a mother who was a nurse, and she was just wonderful with people. My dad was a cop, very calm, very quiet, big guy, big presence. But my mom was just the life of the party, and she could go into any environment. I mean, it didn't matter politically, religiously.
Yeah.
She could go in and she read a room well. So I think I kind of got that from her.
Let's go back to, I want to get your path to becoming a broadcaster. And there's a lot to cover with you, for sure. But I want to go back as a kid. You know, we did this with Duane, and it was fun to ask him about growing up on a farm. And, you know, Duane, he's like, I mean, you just don't want to be on the farm. You had a totally different upbringing in Southern California. What was your connection, and at what age do you remember starting to love baseball?
Well, I had my dad was a cop, my grandpa was a cop, all my uncles were cops, and they had baseball teams. And so every time there was an off day, there was a baseball game. There was the sheriff's department baseball game. And so I can remember going to those things, and they had these uniforms, and they were like a gold lame. I mean, the sheriff's department is like a khaki green and a gold, right?
Yeah.
And gold trim, which is a real handsome uniform. But they had these gold lame pants, and they had gold lame shirts, and they had, and they were so funky, but I loved them. I thought they were like, I want one of those.
Oh, I bet.
I want to wear one of those. And so I would bat boy for my dad, and he was a good player. He could hit and hit the long ball. He was a big guy. Anyway, when I was 10 years old, we'd go to play a game. These were men. And, I could play a little bit, little league.
A little bit, I bet.
So we were a player short. So my dad said, well, he'll play. Well, like 3 of the guys on the team were like, no, this is not good. This is a joke. And so they put me at first base.
Oh, boy.
So the very first inning, there was a ground ball hit to the guy who was most adamant about me not playing. He was a big guy, too. And he caught the ball. And this is softball, 60-foot. That's little league. That's my domain, right? So I'm a first base, and I'm 10 years old. And this guy uncorks a throw at me. He was going to make a point. Ow, I caught the ball.
You caught it.
Won him over.
Of course you did. Yeah.
And I got a
Earned
hit.
your stripes.
And that was it. I thought I was ticked off. The next week they didn't ask me back, right? But that kind of was. I mean, everything in our house was baseball, and everybody loved it. Everybody played it. When we had family picnics, and there was a large family, there'd be 50 people out there, and we were playing baseball. So it started there.
You obviously became an excellent player. I was very surprised when I first learned, now I've known it for a while, that you were a catcher, not a pitcher, and went to Cal Poly as a catcher, correct?
Correct.
So take us down that path and how you made the switch.
Well, I mean, I was always a catcher in high school, and one day we were in a blowout. We were getting killed by Arcadia High School. I went to St. Gabriel High School, and so I was asking the coach who, I said, let me pitch. I want to pitch. Let me pitch an inning, right? So I go out there, and he, all right, go pitch. We're getting beat like 12-0. So I went out there, and I could throw a curveball because I pitched a little bit in Little League, right? And I was throwing hard. And I faced 3 guys and struck them all out, and it was just like, I mean, that to me was the hardest thing,
Right.
Because I did not envision myself as a pitcher. And here I am striking out. There's 3 guys on their team, and that was it. Well, there was some guy there from the Angel organization, Kenny Myers, an old scout, and sure enough, our season ended, and we go into June where they're going to have the draft, and I get this call the night before the draft. He goes, "Hey kid, you want to play professional baseball?" Well, hell yeah. Okay, we're going to draft you. Well, the next day they drafted me as a pitcher catcher. And I thought it was a typographical error. I'm not a pitcher. Stop. And
Yes, you were.
and then when I went to Cal Poly, I went up there to catch.
Yeah.
And they had a full-on 45-game fall schedule, and I was hitting real well and doing well, and I was pitching. And I thought, this is great. And they had a really good pitching coach there, Bertie Haar, who really taught me so much. Augie Garita was the head coach, and I really learned a lot of baseball from him.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the fall ball, he called me in the office. He says, well, you're going to make the varsity, and we want you to pitch. And I go, I don't want to pitch. Well, I'm a player. He goes, well, let me tell you something. You have a chance to make some money with your arm. You ain't going to make it with your bat. Plus, if you want any kind of scholarship from me, you're going to be a pitcher. And that was it. I was a pitcher ever since.
Yes, sir. That's what I'll do.
Augie Garita, very convincing, good salesman.
Yeah. If you want to play for me, this is what you'll do. What was your school training? What did you study at Cal Poly, and was there any connection to broadcasting or journalism?
No, I was a PE major, and I didn't really take school all that seriously, right? Well, the first quarter at Cal Poly, it showed, and there was danger of me not being eligible to play the second quarter. Well, fortunately, I had a roommate who was also a PE major, a guy named Ron Webb, and he would, after he graduated, he would go on to be the principal of Ventura High School, and he's a great guy, and he taught me how to study. And once I learned how to study, it actually became fun. I looked forward to it, and actually, resurrected myself. But I realized it's hard work.
Yeah.
Have to be organized.
Yeah, you do, for sure. So during your playing days, at what point did broadcasting enter the noggin?
Well, it never really did. We always knew Kuip, when we were playing, was going to be a broadcaster. And, I had a ton of kids.
We're going to talk about that.
Well, we're getting to the end of my career. I needed to be home. I mean, Jennifer, my wife, she was raising these kids a lot. I mean, they're all down in San Luis Obispo and or in Pasadena at the time, and I was up here, a lot by myself, and she was doing it all on her own, right? 4 kids and pregnant. So I needed to be there, and so
Jennifer's a saint. Can we just
she
shout out to Jennifer?
Yeah, she's strong. And so I never even thought I'd be in baseball. And Roger Craig offered me the pitching coach job when I was right out of the game. And I had to turn him down. I said, Roger, I can't do this. I need to be home for a while. And so I went into the private world and, got in the restaurant business. And, I didn't know anything about that either. But I'd done a little bit of a show as a player, a K&R thing. And, it was kind of fun. And so I wasn't afraid of the microphone.
Right.
And so when I got out of the game that year, Joe Morgan was starting going away doing his Sunday games with ESPN with John Miller.
Right.
And so they needed somebody to fill in and do those games, those 2 games on the weekend. And I wound up doing like 14 games. And I really liked it. It was fun. I didn't think it had a future in it. And then the next year they added, and then the next year, by 1993, they wanted me to do them all.
Right.
And then I had to go back and have a talk with Jennifer.
I was going to say, okay, so here comes
Hey, I told you I'd be around all these years. She was like, go on.
Well, what can you share? That's a really personal question I'm asking, but what can you share about that conversation with Jennifer to continue doing something you loved? And she's so supportive as a partner to you. I know her really well, but that had to be a tough conversation to know you were going to be gone a lot again.
You've had that conversation.
I have.
And it is, it's a very serious conversation. But it all got back down to the passion that we both had for the game. And when we were away from the game, she realized it too. And it was an opportunity to raise our children in the world of baseball, which it served them well.
The amount you're able to bring your family into your broadcasting style, how did talking about your family and bringing them into your broadcast style help you kind of settle in?
Well, I don't know if you could talk openly about your family experiences doing a football game.
Right.
Because it's a once-a-week deal. And I think that, what happens when you're doing baseball, you're doing every game, you're having dinner with your fans every night. They're sitting down, they're watching you. And it becomes a day-to-day thing, and things happen. I mean, I always love the story about Bear Bryant, the great football coach. And he was at Alabama, and he was a legend. And he walked into the Baltimore Oriole clubhouse before a game. Well, when you go into a college football before a game, everybody's banging their head against the wall, and they're slugging each other. And, well, the baseball clubhouse, I mean, it's not that way. I mean, you have a couple guys asleep on the floor. You have two guys playing cards over here.
Crosswords, dominoes.
Nothing's going on, right?
Yeah.
It's just a different way to get ready for a game. I mean, that's how you have to play baseball. You can't get geeked up and do it. So from a broadcaster's perspective, I mean, the things that happen to you on a daily basis with your family, they're things you can talk about in the course of a ball game, because the pace of baseball is so much different than hockey and basketball and football. There's time to talk about it. And, I mean, I would steal my kids' material.
I want to get that.
Like Wes, when he was 5 years old, he'd be laying on the floor watching cartoons on Saturday, and they'd show the commercials, which kids love commercials as much as the cartoon shows, right? And everything that would come on there, especially in the off season, because we're getting ready for Christmas, right? They show a new toy, and he'd go, I want to get that, I want to get that, I want to get that. And then the next commercial would come up. I want to get that, I want to get that, I want to get that. So it just kind of carried into our broadcast. And, that's kind of how it just happened. Life happens.
Life happens. But it's also what makes you so charming is you let us into your personal life. For your kids, the 5 children, you're gone a lot, but what did it mean to them when you would use a story, when you're telling Wes, in his commercial cadence every time it comes on, and then they're a part of your life, and hearing you talk about them on camera, did that help with, you guys are so close. You have such a wonderful relationship with your children. Was that part of it? Did that help?
Oh, absolutely. They love the notoriety. If they go to, we talked about something that they did or something that they said, and they'd go to the ball to school the next day, they're elevated in front of the class, right? So it was always fun, and it was something we always talked about and laughed about at dinner, and it was actually, there were times when I would single out one of the kids who was scuffling a little bit and talk about them and or something that they said, and and maybe got them through a couple of rough spots.
I always had like a little sign to the kids, whether it was like I touched my ear while I was on camera or something that they knew was for them, because you're gone a lot. And then they feel like they're part of your world when you're away.
Well, we always said, if I start picking my nose, that means stop what you're doing and mind your mother.
I talked to your mom earlier, and I'm going to talk to you later. So as I mentioned, my husband refers to Mike as a Renaissance man. And one of my favorite things about the Krukow family is the musically talented crew that you are. And the stories, when you get to know Mike and become friends with his family, it's just a welcoming environment and a happy environment. You guys are joyful, and a huge part of that is the music that you bring. Paul also reminded me, when you were a player, how you use martial arts in your workout routine. So the fact that you're just, I call you worldly. How does that play a role in this small world of baseball? And how important is it to you to stay up on all these other things that you love?
Well, I just think that, you can get pigeonholed in professional athletics because you're so concentrated on your sport. And it even gets more refined when you start concentrating on your position. Workouts in the off season for catches are different than workouts for starting pitchers, which are different than workouts for outfielders. And you're constantly, you're grading yourself, you're evaluating yourself, and it can be very intense. And you can bring that home to the point where you lose focus. You don't see the forest through the trees. You don't see the kids through the batting cage or, the workouts and whatnot. So I've always believed that there were things in this world that were inviting you to take advantage of. All you needed to do was a little research and make the effort. And none of us are afraid to take the 10,000-mile walk, because it all starts with one step. and learning a new instrument or a new language or learning how to paint.
Right.
I mean, there are so many things.
Cook. You're a really good cook.
Learning how to
You're a really
cook.
good cook.
And your kids, that's things that you can pull them into. You know, they don't have to sit there and talk to me at the level of a big league ball player. We can sit there and learn an instrument together or start painting together at age 4. And you know what? By a year into it, they're better than you are. That's just great confidence that they gain that they can do something better than their dad. I never got a degree at Cal Poly. I left after my junior year thinking I would always go back. I never went back. All my kids have something that I don't have. They have a degree. And it meant the world to them. You know, at the end of, when they graduated from college, they would hold up their diploma and they go, "Hey, Dad, you got one of these?" I didn't think so. You know, so and how cool is that?
Okay, let's talk about something really fun. Duane.
Yeah.
And we can talk about Duane.
Oh,
He bugged you.
you're such a peacock. You know, hair was perfect. You know, the uniform was perfect. I mean, he was a handsome guy. He looked great in a uni. Most middle infielders do anyway, right? But we'd go down there in Tucson because he was in American League. The only time I saw him was in spring training when the Cubs went down to play the Indians in Tucson, or they came up and played us at Scottsdale Stadium. And, you know, I'd see him taking ground ball without a hat on. You know, going, serious business. What a peacock, you know. So, but then I'd play against him, and you know how you start your first outing, you got like 30 pitches the first. Well, Rick Manning would come up, and he was a peacock out in center field, you know, and long hair, perfect. And he'd take like 12 pitches, and then Kuiper would get up there, and he'd take like 13. Well, I faced 2 guys, and I've already spent a lot of bullets, right?
2 innings in, yeah.
2 guys on base. Oh, my gosh. And then I got traded over to the Giants in the winter of 82, and got to Scottsdale in 83, and I saw Kuiper in the clubhouse 5 minutes into my time with the Giants. My first 5 minutes, I love this guy. I mean, he ran that clubhouse. He was he saw everything that was going on there. He was my kind of guy.
So it was immediate, your connection.
Oh yeah, bang bang, absolutely. By the time we broke camp, we were friends for life.
That's fantastic.
I mean, he talk about a guy who sees things. Because a lot of times, you know, like I say, you get pigeonholed to your routine. You know, pitchers don't talk to infielders, don't talk to outfielders. You got your own little pitcher's world, right? Not with him. I mean, he plugged into everybody. And that was one of the reasons why Frank Robinson brought him over here from Cleveland. He was so good in the clubhouse. And he kept things going. And I loved him. And then, you know, as I say, you know, we knew that he was going to be a broadcaster, and you know, this whole thing, we never envisioned the two of us would be doing it.
Then when did the conversation with Duane start to happen about possibly working together? And when we interviewed him his year in Colorado, you may not have known that you could be back with him. How that all worked out is fantastic, but there was a chance it wasn't going to work out.
Well, there was large weirdness there with the team making a deal to go to Tampa because we were all out of a gig. And at that time, you know, I still was working the restaurants and down in San Luis Obispo, but Kuiper wasn't. I mean, he was a full-time broadcaster. So he did, and it took him like about an hour and a half to get another gig with Colorado, and off he went. And then lo and behold, Peter McGowan and the investors kept the team here in San Francisco. So we weren't going anywhere, and it locked us in. We were completely rattled that I was starting to do this full-time, and he was out the door. And then, you know, that year, I mean, when we'd see him, it was a big concern. And we were upset by it. And God bless Larry Berry, got him back. And then that was it. We were together ever since. But yeah, look, he taught me, really. I mean, I had Hank Greenwald, I had Ted Robinson, I had some incredible teachers. But Kuiper was, you know, he said, let's go, come with me. And we walked down to this little, he loved stationery stores. In every town he had a little stationery store. Some guys have little bars that they go to, but he'd have a little stationery store. And he went in there and he was very meticulous about the
pencils
number,
and
what lead you're using for your pencils, and he had it all lined up. And then he said, okay, and he bought me all my first deal, right? So, and And that was it. I mean, and it worked. It was just like sitting there talking ball with your buddy.
We'll wrap up with this. So when I interviewed Duane, I asked him obviously how he felt about you. And Duane has 2 brothers. And he said, Mike is like a brother to me. So I thought that was pretty poignant. But then I found this quote from Duane. He said, we're really the lucky ones because we've gotten a chance to do this together. I mean, look, I've had to carry the load, but you know what? I didn't even mind. It's so typical of Duane. How do you describe your relationship with him and what he means to you?
I don't have any brothers.
I know.
And he is that guy to me. But what started off a relationship where he was the big brother, that changed about halfway down the road. I'm the big brother. I have to fight the fights that he starts.
He is an instigator.
He's an instigator.
He's an instigator.
I have to smooth things over that he riles. But it's been a love affair. I mean, I just think that we're the luckiest guys in this game. Because who gets to say they get to go to work with their best friend? And man, did we hit the jackpot twice.